Drop the gun!
Statistics show that most gunfights occur at night in low light conditions. With that in mind, I'll ask you two questions. Do you have a flashlight readily available with your self-defense firearm? And when is the last time you practiced shooting in low light with or without a flashlight? Hello, I'm Lenny McGill. This program is designed to give you the information you need to acquire the proper equipment and become skilled with it to greatly enhance your chances of survival in a real gunfight situation. The information you're about to see is being presented by two of the most skilled and respected names in the self-defense shooting industry, Ken Hackathorn and Bill Wilson. Hackathorn is one of the world's foremost authorities on the subject of the tactical deployment of small arms. He has trained U.S. military special forces, FBI and police, and anti-terrorist units. He's been involved in the tactical application of firearms for more than 25 years. Bill Wilson is the president and founder of Wilson Combat, manufacturers of high-quality custom gun parts, accessories, and complete custom guns for self-defense and competition. While his background started as a competition shooter in 1974, Wilson has devoted the past 6 years to the development and application of self-defense handguns. This program will give you cutting-edge knowledge on the tactical use of flashlights and handguns so that you can master the night. Now, here's Ken Hackathorn and Bill Wilson with the first segment of Night Mastery.
Okay, what we're going to talk about now is the use of the flashlight. Remember, one of the subjects that a lot of people don't really address once they procure a sidearm for either home defense or for their own use is the fact that a flashlight, in my mind, is integral with carrying a gun. And I'll tell you why. Certainly, if you look at it statistically, the times that you're most likely going to need a firearm to defend yourself is going to be during the hours of low or limited light. And one of the key issues about a flashlight, folks, is the reason we use it is not to assist our shooting, is to identify our target. Now you say, well, I don't need a flashlight except at night. What happens when you leave home in the morning and you don't come back until late in the evening and your flashlight you left at home because you think I'm going to be out in the daytime? Or what happens when you have to, during the daytime, you have to go into a darkened building, into a basement, into an attic, into a warehouse, or someplace that you might find yourself where suddenly there is no natural light or no artificial light. For that reason, I think a flashlight that you can have accessible to you or on your person has a lot going for it. Of course, the drawback is to pick a flashlight you can carry with you 8 or 10 hours a day often ends up being much too big and much too cumbersome. So we're going to talk about the ones that Bill and I both like, and we'll also talk about the techniques. I firmly believe that if you keep a firearm in your home for self-defense, wherever that firearm is placed, there should be a flashlight right beside it. Because you wake up in the middle of the night because your wife tells you she heard something in the house, or you hear a crash bang, something goes bump at dark 30, you pick up your pistol, you pick up your flashlight. They go together. Because in today's society, there's absolutely no acceptable reason to say I shot at something I couldn't identify. And even if you're found to be, in essence, not guilty of a criminal wrongdoing, I guarantee you're going to face civil litigation if you shoot in the dark and don't identify your target and impose injury or death upon somebody you don't intend to shoot. So the flashlight is paramount. And the reason we use a flashlight, again, is to identify our target, identify the threat. Now, of course, the next question is people say, well, okay, I've just went and bought a fancy new blaster. What am I going to get in a flashlight? Well, everybody has different approaches. And the typical one, of course, is to go out and buy the cheapest flashlight you can find. That's generally a big mistake. And again, people often go out and pick a flashlight that they think, for example, would be ideal for police work. An example of that would be a large police duty type flashlight. And those can be fine, particularly if you're going to lay it beside your sidearm with a bed at night. A big flashlight can work just fine. But as you can imagine, if you're going to go out for the evening or you're going to go away for the day, a flashlight that's in your pocket can be pretty unnatural. It's big, it's hard to conceal. You're probably going to leave it in the car, your briefcase, someplace where you don't have it. So while they're good at home, they have limited virtue for something you're going to carry on you all the time. So let's talk briefly about flashlights and what we like and what we don't like. I'm a big believer in a little flashlight, because a little flashlight means I'm likely to have it in my pocket, my vest pocket, my jacket pocket, in my fanny pack if I'm carrying a pistol there, someplace where it's going to be handy when I need it. Now, typically what a lot of people shop for, and this is a classic example, they go to a local hardware store or sporting goods store and they buy a nice little small flashlight like this mini mag light. And it's a nice small flashlight. They've even got little belt pouches you can buy that they come with. It allows you to wear it right on your belt, and it can be real handy. A drawback about the little mini flashlights like this is that while the mini mag light is an excellent utility light, it's nice, handy size, it requires you basically to twist it on and off. You actually have to take two hands to turn it on and off. And in my mind makes that totally unacceptable for a flashlight to use in support of a handgun. It takes two hands. And for me, that's a no-go. Then there's other small flashlights, and here's an example of one that is small and light and could be used. The problem with it is the location, the switch, the thumb switch to turn it on and off isn't too bad. You've got to physically turn it on and off, and we like to see a light that has a pressure switch. It means you can push on a button or push on a switch, and as soon as you remove your thumb, the light goes out. That's a desirable feature. This one actually takes a physical motion, forward on and back to turn it off. Also, it's a little bit of an awkward flashlight. You notice it's candle powered. You know, it's not real bright. Now remember, any flashlight's better than no flashlight, but we like to have one that's fairly intense. One of my favorites, and one I've used for years, and I've been a big fan of the Surefire Products flashlights, actually made by, the Surefire lights made by Laser Products. And the original one was called a 6P, a nice little compact flashlight, uses lithium batteries, real high intensity lamp, and in essence the way it works, if you want to turn it on for permanent use, you can actually twist the end cap on, and that turns the light on. This one unfortunately now has dead batteries, which we'll talk about in a minute. But if you don't turn it on that way, it's got a pressure switch in the rear. And this flashlight was originally designed to utilize what we'll talk about in a minute called the Harry's technique. And that was a technique where you put your thumb on the rear of the flashlight switch and simply draw your weapon, put what we call it wrist to wrist, back of your wrist to the back of the other, and the flashlight is lined along with the weapon, and wherever the weapon looks, the light is pointed, and simply by pressing on the back of it, you can illuminate your target. This is the original 6P, very popular flashlight. I got one when they first came out and carried it for years. An excellent product. About 2 or 3 years ago, one of Bill's and my friends and associates, a fellow by the name of Bill Rogers, who's been a real leading force in small arms training and tactical and self-defense handgun training, came up with a concept where basically he liked a technique where he modified the flashlight. He used an O-ring, slid an O-ring over it, and adjusted them so the pressure cap worked a little different. And he found that if you grab the flashlight like so, where the pressure switch is right against the heel of the hand, and you held it like so, he would draw his weapon and held him in line like this. And basically wrap his fingers around the front of the pistol, and he could illuminate his target, and he liked that approach. Matter of fact, it was fairly successful, and what he did was he impressed the people at Surefire Products enough that they modified the flashlight, and they actually brought it out as what they now call the 6Z. And if you'll notice, it's a little different shape. The pressure switch sticks out more, so for easier contact, it's a bit stiffer. And also, it's got a rubber positioner that allows you to grab the light and hold it just exactly like so. And once again, both these flashlights have the same lithium battery system. And I'll show you very quickly that once you initiate and turn it on, it's a very bright light. It's extremely bright. So even if you have to shine it in the eyes of somebody threatening you, it has a very good effect. Believe me, at close quarters combat distances, and you shine this light into somebody's face, it has a blinding effect, which allows you to either make your getaway or at least disturb them enough so that they're going to have a hard time causing you a threat as far as focusing on you. Now, but with this light, you can see the system is you grab it like so, which is the system I like. You draw your weapon, hands wrap around right around the front in a conventional grip, and you illuminate the flashlight pointed right at whatever zone or threat you're looking at, like so, as you'll see, like so. It's a good system. This is currently the light I'm carrying. You'll notice it's also got a wrist thong on it. Now, some people don't care for it. One advantage to the wrist thong is it means when you're involved in a tactical scenario, put it over your wrist, you've got your flashlight handy. If you have to do something like a two-handed task, reloading your weapon, moving somebody out of the way, opening a door, anything you have to do, you need your hand, you can simply drop it and accomplish that task. Say, for example, you're here and you need it to charge your weapon up. You can do it like so, then reacquire the light, go back into use. So I like the concept of the wrist thong. When you're not using it, it just hangs beside the light. Once again, I normally carry one in my pocket. As a matter of fact, if I'm wearing my vest, it's in the vest pocket. During the cooler months, it's normally in my coat pocket. I'm a big believer in this particular light and this system. The drawback to it is really twofold. One, it uses the lithium batteries. And lithium batteries tend to have a habit of when they wear out, they go very quickly. Normally you turn the light on and you notice it looks kind of dim. And that's a clue that it's going away on you. Typically, if I was to take new batteries in this light and turn it on and leave it on, they're good for about an hour. That's about the length of them. Remember, for a flashlight that's used on a quick on and off system, that's a long time. But for a permanent use, say for example you're out changing a tire on your car or using it like a conventional flashlight, your battery life is going to be relatively short. And they're fairly expensive batteries. Replacement cost on them is probably around, for 2 batteries in them that are to use the thing, are probably in the neighborhood of $10 plus, I believe. $10 plus is a realistic price. And the other thing I can tell you about them, they're not real shock resistant. If you notice, you look at mine, mine's got a piece of bicycle inner tube around the end piece, meaning if I drop it or hit it on a hard surface, hopefully that'll cushion it, because I found in the past, having dropped these like out of a pocket and landing on the concrete, it can often damage the lamp and the light's dead. Replacement of the lamp retails right around 24, 25 bucks, so it's an expensive unit to replace. So a couple pieces of bicycle inner tube cut and slipped over the end acts as a cushioning should you drop it or should it take a severe impact. Hopefully it'll last a little while longer. Once again, superb product. I can't say enough about it. There's a lot of lights in the market. I like this one, and this is the one I currently use. If you're going for a big flashlight, it's probably to your advantage to have one that's fairly handy to use. A big, massive flashlight can be very difficult to grip. Now, this nice compact model here from Streamlight is exceptionally bright. It does an excellent job. And because of its size, it allows you to accomplish a couple of grips that we're going to show you in a minute and do it fairly well. Because the bigger the grip, the harder it is to get these fingers of the support hand into play. So we'll talk about different firing positions using the different flashlights. But initially, shop around and find a flashlight that works for you. You always want to make sure you find one that's got a pressure switch on it. So when your thumb's on it or your finger's on it, as soon as you move or you release the pressure and the light goes out. It's very important. You don't want the light staying on. Remember, the light's used to identify the threat, not necessarily to help you get a good sight picture and shoot, but to identify what the target is. Remember, one of the other techniques we want to impress upon you, if you're searching and working with a flashlight and you identify a threat, quickly move. Get away from where you were. Because once again, once people see the light, if they're going to return fire or shoot at you, they're going to shoot where the light was or where the light is, and you want to be where the light is not. In the simplest system, especially if you're indoors, sometimes you can't move a big distance, but if you're here and you're illuminated and all of a sudden you see a threat, one step to the right, one step to the left, either way, to get out of that zone where the incoming fire may be returned to. If you can't step right or left, drop down to your knee. Remember, once you go to your knee, you're not as mobile, and you're going to have to get back up to move. So there's some limits to it, but different flashlight systems, the Streamlights work very well. The advantage to a big one like this one is while it's maybe harder for some people to hold on to, if it's big enough that you can actually help line it up with your forearm and your weapon, it can actually give you an index of give you a little bit better alignment if you have to use it as an instrument to move things out of the way. If you've got a door to open, see, as long as this thing allows you to open a door, not step in yourself, actually take it and push the door open. If you need to lift materials up, like look underneath of a bed or whatever, this allows you, enough length allows you to lift the material up without getting too close to it. So a lot of different flashlights. For the most part, I would say that Bill and I are probably the biggest fans of the Surefire light systems. This happens to be a rechargeable one, a little bit bigger unit. You notice it's got a lens cap on it, so if you're working in a dark environment and you want to be able to read or see without compromising yourself, the red lens cap works very well. But if you need it for actual use, you can flip the lens cap off and you've got a fairly intense bright light to use with your searching technique. One of the best things, one of the best features, as you well know, there are a number of weapons on the market now that have been modified to utilize a light mount. And typically these weapons will be service pistols. And what happens is you have a light mount that attached to the weapon. In this case, it's a Glock 17 and a Surefire light. And normally these things are rigged up so that they have a pressure switch. And the pressure switch is typically attached to the weapon by Velcro tape. Allows you to position the pressure switch wherever you want it. And the system is designed primarily so that when you pick up your pistol, you get your light right there. One of the advantages to it allows one-handed use. So again, all you have to do is grab the weapon, and when you just pinch your fingers against the frame of the gun, what happens is you illuminate the light. And wherever you look is where the light looks. I think it's an excellent system. To me, for a weapon you keep in your home for self-protection, this makes a lot of sense. Because what happens when you pick up at night and you've got to get your kids in the bedroom with you for security. You've got to open doors. You've got to check around things. Instead of being a two-handed operation with a light and a weapon, now you've got a one-handed operation, which allows you to do a lot of other things. Search, move. Search, move. They're not inexpensive, but it makes a great deal of sense. To me, if you've got a home defense handgun, it's geared strictly for what you keep in your bedroom or what you keep in case something goes bump in the night. You'd be hard-pressed to do any better than a light-mounted weapon such as this one using the Surefire system. One of the things we'll show you here that is all the rage in America, it's the favorite thing of the gun shop commandos, is a laser. And basically what you've got is a red laser that shines a nice red dot wherever you point the weapon. And of course people tell me this is the answer. Well, I haven't figured out what the question is, because in my opinion it has very limited virtue. To me it's a nice training aid if you're practicing like shooting on the move or practicing your point shooting. It shows you where the gun's pointing. And also if you want to impress your neighbors, it's real neat. But as a practical application, it's fairly worthless because it doesn't allow you to identify your target or your threat. You don't know what's out there with that red dot. And for the most part, I find that every once in a while I see somebody shows up with them, and they're generally less than amazed when they leave the range, when they discover how weak they really are. There's often an implication by the people who market these that these are the choice of the elite military or police organizations. They use lasers. They do in the movies because movies are make-believe. In the real world, you don't see these things. Only the gun shop commandos are the best customers for these. We'll talk about flashlight techniques in a minute, but for the most part, pick a good weapon, take your time to pick a good light system, and then practice with it. You have any comments regarding flashlights, Bill?
One last thing I wanted to mention about the flashlight selection. While Ken and I totally agree that the Surefire is the light of choice for actually a fighting light, as he mentioned, the battery expense and the low run time on them for using for utilitarian purposes, makes me want to recommend the mag light, especially the size here that takes the, I believe it's the C size batteries. This light's still small enough to be able to get a good firing grip and shoot with it. It's got enough intensity to identify your target at most of our normal contact distances, and the light is very rugged, used by police a lot, and inexpensive. Where this light here, the Surefire that we highly recommend, has a retail of like over $80 a unit. Where the nice mag light here is under $20, at Walmart, place like that, even closer to $15 probably. So, if cost is a factor, and you want to use the light also for general purposes, to have it, to change a flat or when your power goes out of your house or whatever, you might look at having a few of these things around because they do work good for a fighting light in addition to working good for a utility light.
I hope now you were impressed with the fact that if you carry a gun, you should also carry a flashlight or have one close. For if you were to use a gun in a self-defense situation at night or less than optimal lighting conditions without a flashlight, a lawyer could have a field day in court showing how you were reckless and had no regard for human life, even if you were the one being burglarized or robbed or held up. After all, you shot someone and could not be certain that they were carrying a weapon or if they did pose a threat to your life because, well, you really couldn't see after all. You didn't have a flashlight and it was dark. You get the drift? So if anything you pick up in this tape makes an impression, I hope that you will have a flashlight available to you when you do carry a firearm. Let's move on now to flashlight shooting techniques with Hackathorn and Wilson.
We're going to take a look now at the individual flashlight techniques that are commonly taught or commonly used in the United States. There's about 3 or 4 that we encounter that are routinely shown, and what we plan to do tonight is show you each of them, let you take a look at them. Our advice is to try them out, see which one works for you. We can tell you that realistically there's probably a couple of them that tend to work the best, and we'll show you the ones that Bill and I both favor. As a matter of fact, we both are fans of the same technique. But again, people are built different. People have different optical problems. Just for whatever reason, you may find one that, while it works perfectly for Bill and I, may not be that desirable for you. So we're going to simply show you each one. The next time you have an opportunity to work with your flashlight, you can kind of try them yourself. I won't kid you. One thing about flashlight techniques that you can do, and you can do this at home, make sure your weapon is clear. Make sure it's empty. Take your flashlight. Particularly, the best time to do this is in your home in the evening or at night when you don't have a lot of people home, or your kids are in bed, or there's nobody in the house but you, and actually practice searching and clearing your house with a flashlight. Put your weapon, make sure it's clear, and the flashlight in the position it would normally be in your home, and then with the lights off in the house, pick up your flashlight, pick up your gun, and do the process of actually searching and clearing your house using the flashlight techniques that you are interested in. And I assure you, by the time you finish searching and clearing your house, you'll discover real quick which one works best for you. Remember, the object is wherever the flashlight looks, that's where the gun's aiming. If you find a situation where your flashlight's looking one place and the sights are pointed someplace else, to speak honest, it's not going to be a very effective technique. You also find a lot of them are very fatiguing. For the very short term, when you're just looking in your room or looking around your bedroom, you may find some of them that look real good, but after you've done the whole house, you can find that they can be very, very wearing on you and hard to maintain. So that's a factor you must look at too. Of the ones we're going to discuss, let's talk about the very first one we're going to show you. Is probably the most popular one, the most commonly one taught in the United States. It's called the Harries technique. And that's actually named after a fellow by the name of Mike Harries, who was one of the early pioneers in the Southwest Pistol League. Developed this technique. Mike's been an instructor at Gunsight out in Arizona, and his technique's been taught worldwide for that matter. It was an interesting and a real good approach to solving a problem, when the problem was how do you shoot and move and use a flashlight and make sure the flashlight is aligned with the gun, indexed on the target, and also how do you manipulate it so that you can turn it on and off quickly. And of course, the technique that Mike came up with was based primarily on working the pressure switch with either your index finger or your little finger. And with the advent of the Surefires, that's why the buttons on the rear of the original Surefire flashlights, like the original 6P, the reason the flashlight button's there is so with the Harries technique, you can operate the switch to turn it on and off. Now mind you, there's a right way and a wrong way to do the Harries technique, and I'm going to ask Bill to step right up here, and he's basically going to demonstrate it. You draw your weapon in conventional manner, you put the wrist of this hand and against the wrist of that one. Now, what we're going to show you, it's critical for this to work, it's using isometric muscle tension to control recoil of the gun, is this elbow must be pulled under. The more it's pulled over under, the more pressure you have against the gun. In theory, so when the gun recoils or cycles, it'll come back as a unit together. Now, if you get tired and you bring your arm up, you end up just laying the gun on top of the wrist, and what happens is the gun flies away from the flashlight. So for the Harries technique to work, you got to pull the elbow under so there's a lot of isometric tension against the back of the wrist. And of course, you got to work with making sure the flashlight aligns with where the gun's pointed. A lot of people find initially, and you got to position your hand so that wherever the pressure switch is at, there you go, that the light and the gun coincide. And depending a lot on the flashlight and your particular body position, you may find that they don't work too well together. You may have to rehearse it, and you may say, I can't do this, and you have to move on to another. But that's the basic Harries technique.
Elaborate, if you will, on the wrist-to-wrist contact. How much, where do you want to put it together?
You want the back of this hand, bring your hand down for a minute, Bill. You want the back of this hand right here against the back of this one. So you're actually pressing almost wrist to wrist. And you want to press in tight with the elbow. Remember, the more you pull the elbow under, the more isometric muscle tension. You're actually like pushing against each other. The more you're going to feel. And that way you're going to compensate and control some of the recoil so the hands will stay together when the gun goes off.
And the more you pull your right foot back, farther back than you would normally have it for a normal weaver stance, the easier it is to bring that elbow down and get locked in.
Yeah.
The more square you are to the target, the more contorted you feel trying to use this technique.
Right.
The more back like this, and you're better.
And what about the comfort of this, or the how does it work?
Well, it works, and it's a good technique. What I find, it's good for the short term. My experience has been if you only got to search a room or look in your bedroom or check down the hallway, this works out real well. What I have found, and I have actually searched and cleared buildings from the top to the bottom using this technique, and believe me, it's extremely fatiguing. When you're really tense, I mean, believe me, when you're looking for somebody, the potential life-threatening individual in a building, and you're using this technique, number one, you're stressed out, your muscles are going to be real tense. What I found is after about one floor, you're starting to really get so weary and fatigued, you start taking it easy out, and you pretty soon you start relaxing and bringing this arm up to eventually you're using a gun like this, but your gun's just resting on the arm. There's no recoil reduction or control at all. What happens is you sense that there may be somebody in there, you feel the old pucker factor, and you say, I better do this right, and you pull under, and you're doing it right, but believe me, it's very tiring and very stressful. So I consider this a good technique for the short term, not necessarily for long-term searching and clearing environment.
And then once again, elaborate, Bill, if you would, on the recoil and how you're supposed to control that with this particular carry.
On the recoil control, okay. What we're going to do, we're going to push the back side of this hand right into the back side of this one. I'm pulling this way with this hand. I'm pushing to the right with a shooting hand. Got my foot a little bit farther to the rear than normal. By pulling my elbow down, I'm actually forcing those hands together, making everything lock in.
And what we want to see is, ideally, is when the gun recoils. When the gun recoils, it should recoil as a unit. Everything should come back together.
You want this to happen instead of this.
Yeah. Because if you don't have that isometric pressure, what's going to happen is the gun's going to go off.
You're just resting on your arm, really.
It's just going to rest, and it's going to jump right up off your arm, like so.
Which really defeats the whole purpose.
Well, it doesn't help you any. What it makes it is it doesn't make it a real effective follow-up shot. If you only got to fire one shot, it may be fine. But if you got to do multiple shots, it's probably not going to be the quickest or the surest method around.
And of the methods we're going to talk about tonight, it is definitely the most uncomfortable.
Yes, definitely.
Even for the short term, it's the most
short term, it's still very fatiguing. The next one we're going to show you is a system that's taught and pretty much been pioneered and recommended by Ray Chapman, the combat shooting great, many years ago, worked to develop it. He recognized that while the Harry's technique had validity, he understood that it was fatiguing and it was tiring. He was looking for something that's more natural. What he found is that most people, unless you practice this Harry's technique a lot, they weren't getting the light to coincide with where the gun was pointing. And he wanted to come up with a system that he felt was more natural and quicker. And the system that Ray came up with is basically you hold your flashlight in your support hand right alongside of your pistol. You wrap your fingers right around in a conventional firing grip. The flashlight is laying right alongside the bore on the left side. And once again, you almost have to have a flashlight that has a pressure switch, a button to illuminate. And it's a very natural system. One of the things you got to use pretty much your normal firing stance. You don't have to change your feet or twist your body around a lot. Now, the other thing we can tell you about it, it's comfortable. You can use it for a long period of time. We won't kid you. You don't have as strong as a grip, so when you start shooting faster or start shooting in rapid concentration, it's not uncommon for the hands to come apart a bit. But for most searching, particularly long term, it's not that fatiguing and it works well. But you must have a flashlight that has a pressure switch, generally where the thumb can work it. If you don't.
Do you have the barrel of the flashlight, the body of the flashlight, up against the grip of the firearm? Is that what you're doing? You pressing that together? Let me see. Come around a little bit
like this. Okay, there's basically what you're seeing right there. In essence, it's a lightly supported one-hand shooting technique, believe me.
It works really good with 9mm.
Yeah.
And as the calibers increase.
As the recoil goes up, the more tendency is when you fire the gun, they want to come apart.
All right, Bill, go ahead and point it right down the range here, right at me. And I guess you're able to really point the gun where the flashlight
looks.
It's a very natural pointing.
A natural system, and one it's a very popular one. It's an easy one to teach people quickly. If I was to take a group of shooters who we're going to spend a lot of time practicing and learning a flashlight technique, this would be one of the first ones I'd show them. Another one we'll show you is a slight variation of that, and it's one that's taught by the combat shooting instructor Masad Ayub. Many of the viewers will have recognized his name from many of the shooting periodicals. He's widely read, very well respected weapons instructor, has the Lethal Force Institute where he teaches a great deal about the legal aspect and the mindset of self-defense shooting. And he came up with a modification we felt was a little bit more natural. Remember, to hold that flashlight down in the Chapman technique, you've actually got to flex your wrist down. With the modern police flashlights that are out, which is what most all of us are using, is a variation of a police flashlight, which have a very wide beam on them, right? A wide spray of the beam. He found if you grab the flashlight, even if the barrel of the flashlight's pointing up, in other words, it's somewhat elevated in his beam, there's enough splash of the beam that you can still see your target and identify your threat. So he came up with a slightly modified system like that, where the gun comes up, the flashlight's held more or less, so both wrists are in the same relation. You don't have to bend one down like that. They're both like this. You're going to see that the beam's going to be a bit high, but normally at combat distance, we're talking about close quarters, in a house, in a parking lot, in your garage, you're going to see enough splash of the beam to identify who the target is and be able to fire from. And quite honestly, it's probably a more natural way to grip the weapon and the flashlight. You're going to find it actually feels better because you're not doing that flex down on the wrist. The downside to it, of course, is if you have to identify something really in detail, you don't have the main part of the beam, you're not utilizing the beam to absolutely blind the person unless they're very close to you. It has merit, and it's something you should try out. The next technique we want to talk about is one that's been with us for decades, and it's a basic technique that was taught by American law enforcement back in the 50s. And the theory was that if you illuminate your threat with a flashlight in front of you, that you're going to be an easy target. So they taught that you held the flashlight away from your body, preferably up and away from your body, and held the weapon with a strong hand to do your searching or do your target identification. It has validity, there's no question about it. The problem is it's very hard to coordinate where the beam is. Most everybody initially, by the time you bring the weapon out to cover the threat zone, bring the flashlight and turn it on, most everybody has to make a correction. You're never on. And during the time you're making the correction, remember, ideally you want to turn the light on. Quickly identify out and move. And if you've got the light up here moving around your wrist trying to find it, you're losing the element of surprise and you're losing the time element you need to be working with. So, should you practice with it? Should you look at it? Absolutely. Are there occasions you may want to use it? Sure. Indoors, close confines, hallways and stuff, you may not be able to use this technique. I think it's overrated, and I think a lot of people who promote it are being unrealistic, that most individuals are not very proficient with it.
Another downside of that technique for me is it's kind of like the walking and chewing gum at the same time sort of thing. When you're gunning flashlights here, it's real natural. When you want the light out, you kill the light and you move, get away from the signature of the light. When you're up like this, it's like it's two separate things. It's like, okay, you got to really consciously think, okay, I got to get that light out now. Where it's a much more natural thing, at least for me. On, light on, move, light on, move. Much more natural here than it is with a light out like this.
How's that feel up there too? Is it kind of awkward?
Yeah, it's pretty awkward, and like Ken mentioned, every time when you go up there, first shot, you're not anywhere close. So you have to illuminate the light a longer period of time to find out what the threat is.
And most police officers naturally have a big flashlight. So there again, because the balance of the flashlight is not generally that natural to get it lined up, you've got to do a little weaving around to find out where it's at. And if you're shooting, believe me, a lot of things are going on. So while it has virtue, it may not always be the easiest one to use. Sounds good, but we find it's very difficult to execute. The technique that both Bill and I prefer and really like is the one that was pioneered by our friend Bill Rogers. We'll demonstrate that next. It only works effectively if you have a flashlight like one of these Surefires with the rear-mounted pressure switch. With those, they work superbly. If you have one that's got a flashlight with a button up like this, it's not going to work at all for you. Bill will show you what it's like. Flashlight's normally held between your index and your middle finger of your support hand. Pressure switch is going to be held right back.
Just palm it, basically. Just
palm it to turn the light on. And what he'll do is when he draws his weapon, it allows him to wrap these fingers, pretty much get the equivalent to almost a standard style of grip.
String a little more of the way here.
Okay, so these fingers wrap right on the front.
Have virtually a full firing grip now.
Yeah, almost a complete firing grip. And what he does is, with the intensity of that light, allows him to turn it on and off with the light pointing almost ideally right where his weapon is at. It's not fatiguing. It makes it very easy for him to illuminate as soon as the light goes out and move, or if he finds a necessity to shoot, he's ready to do it. Now, it's once again keyed primarily to the Surefire light, and this one happens to be the 6Z, which is designed primarily for this technique, and in my opinion, it's probably the optimum technique to use. It's the one I currently use, it's the one I currently teach.
So what you do, you come up, illuminate, move, illuminate, move, illuminate, move.
Always get out of the zone where you've just illuminated. And once again, with the wrist thong, you don't have to have it, but it's a nice feature in case you have to do some task like reload, manipulate your weapon, move a piece of furniture, or whatever it may be. That way you don't have to put it in your pocket or re-grab it. One of the classic things we see people out, whether it be police officers or private citizens, they'll be out using their flashlight, and when it comes time to reload, they'll put it between their legs, they try to put it in their mouth. I've actually seen them with the flashlight turned on, stick it under their arm with the light on, all kinds of goofy things to try to reload their weapon or clear their weapon. Well, the advantage of this system, you just drop it on the wrist thong and it's right there. If you do have to lower the flashlight or get rid of it, put it in your pocket, stick it in your waistband, okay? And one of the advantages to the smaller flashlights, you can imagine if you've got a big flashlight like this and it comes time you've got a task or something to do, it may not fit in your pocket well and it may be very cumbersome to stick in your belt. But remember, that's ideally where it goes. Don't lay it down. Which people say, well, why don't I turn my light on permanently, leave it on, and then throw it in the room? Well, you've just given up your source of light. And invariably, Murphy being alive and well, it'll roll in the room and turn around and illuminate you. So while that may sound good in the movies, it's something you don't want to do. It's like throwing your gun in a room. Once you've thrown it, you don't have it anymore. It may belong to somebody else. So those are the flashlight techniques that we would normally like for you to look at. You may want to try them, see how well they work for you. My advice to you is that you look at all the systems, and let's tell you about the one that is the ultimate. And this is Bill's pistol with a Laser Products light mount on it. In this case, it's a Glock 17. These are dedicated mounts with a pressure switch. And the beauty of this thing, if you've got this beside your nightstand at home, the light's going to be coordinated right with where your sights are looking. They're zeroed right to where the gun's looking at. You pick your weapon up, and you don't have to worry about another task, what your hand's going to do. You can use it one-handed if necessary, or two-handed. And in my book, if you have the opportunity to get it, and this is an expensive unit, this is the way to go. And Bill will show you just how well it works.
We've got Velcro glued to the side of the grip panel. And so the pressure switch can be located wherever it's convenient for your particular grip position. And you can either use it with this hand or palm it with this one. I prefer to have it set with a shooting hand, triggers it that way. If you have to open a door or whatever, you can use it one-handed. That's basically squeeze the grip, your light's on. Makes it real easy to search and then move, get away from the light.
Can you actually, say, sight that into the line of the bore, or is it just basically set up?
These things are so bright that it illuminates everything downrange.
What most of them have, though, the lamp is slightly offset. And people will put them on their weapon and say, well, my lamp is not shining exactly where my sights are. The lamp is offset for a reason. What simply you do is you focus where the gun's, and you turn your lamp, and you can turn that beam ever so slightly. And you can actually zero it to your beam. And that's the way it's made. So people say, well, the lamp looks like it's a little cockeyed. It's supposed to be. And that allows you to point it and then focus it. So wherever your sights are, you make sure your beam's shining right there. To the point where, at realistic ranges, if you take a target that's real close, basically what you'll find is, generally speaking, wherever the center of the beam is, where your bullet's going to go. And we'll show you when the light gets a bit lower here. I can show you right here where the center of my beam is, also happens to be right where my sights are pointed. That's where my sights are centered in the center of the beam. So that means at real close distances under stress, in all likelihood, wherever the center of the light beam is where my bullet's going to strike. So you can be used as almost as a point indicator for close distance shots. Once again, a relatively expensive unit. In some cases, you're talking about, depending on the weapon that the Surefire offers it for, and once again, they're made for service-type pistols. You won't find them for small, compact handguns. The typical service guns, but that would mean military and police sidearms, the light mounts are available. This one, of course, is for the Glock. They have them for the Beretta, the SIG, the Colt 1911, and the Smith & Wesson Autos, the ones you'll typically encounter. And I think they have great virtue, they're extremely practical, and for a home defense handgun, I would say they're probably, almost the ultimate thing to have.
Yeah, they're the catalog. And as we mentioned earlier, the other advantage is they're so bright that they will actually blind, your opponent there, your threat.
Combine them with the tritium night sights, and you got a real, illuminate the target to see where the threat's at, lights out, and you've got your tritium night sights. You can align the gun perfectly with the threat, fire in the dark. But remember, once again, we must identify the threat first. Is that a target we want to shoot? Then light goes out, move if possible, and then you can use your tritium sights, which show you exactly where your weapon is aligned, and fire your shot. So combine those, and you've got a very, very effective low light or nighttime self-defense.
Like in a situation where you eliminate the threat area, you find out that is a legitimate threat. A shot needs to be fired. You move away from the light. You're actually better to not re-illuminate, to actually use the night sights, right? Exactly.
My recommendation, the teaching point I would have, is if there's, say, somebody's invaded my home, I step out into the hallway, or I look down the stairwell, and I see a figure or movement, I illuminate, I see a hostile threat that poses a lethal threat to me, a weapon or whatever, and I have made a decision that I want to return fire or I want to fire at him, I'm not going to re-illuminate to shoot. I'm going to move if I can. I'm going to utilize the night sight to align my weapon with the target and fire my shot. And then only if I move again and I want to re-identify the target or determine its location, I'll quickly re-illuminate, find out, and move again. You do not leave the light on to do your searching. Another advantage to this is if we're working together, if I'm in my house and I've got your wife or somebody, a house member is assisting you and you want to indicate a place to go or a door to check, you can do it very quickly. You can simply pick an object, a doorway for example, and just do a quick flick of light to show them that's where I want you to go or that's what I want you to be aware of. It can actually be used very quickly as an indicator. Move right there. So you don't have to use a lot of voicing. You can simply go point to the person, get a hold of them, and go like that and show them that's the threat area. Watch out for that doorway. Watch out for that corner. So it has some utility in that respect. Overall, I would consider this to be one of the most desirable things you could have in a home defense handgun. Remember, a home defense handgun very likely is one left in the house. It's not going to be carried. It's one that's going to be available to you, strictly for house defense. And it's something every member of the household who has been trusted and trained and skilled to use a sidearm should be comfortable with. I find that most women are very skilled with this and quickly decide that this is the system they like, because it doesn't require them to hold a flashlight, manipulate a flashlight and a gun at the same time. They can do it all in one task. So when you pick a sidearm, by the way, you want to pick a weapon that's not real heavy. A lot of women, if they're not big statured or they don't have a lot of upper body strength, will have a hard time holding a big heavy pistol. So if you pick a sidearm that's a little lighter, combined with a light mount, which does add weight to most of them, that's a factor you want to take in mind, because if the gun weighs 4 or 5 pounds loaded, you're going to find a lot of people holding it up and searching with it may fatigue very quickly.
The key to all shooting skills is adapting the technique to your particular body size, strength, and shape. The same is true with flashlight techniques. And of course, once you adapt the technique, you must practice. Again, true with flashlight techniques. What I found that works best for me with the standard Maglite and my Colt 45 is the Ayub technique. I practiced a lot of one-handed shooting, and I find that this is a nice extension of that practice. And I found that I have trained enough so as to be able to point the flashlight in line with the sights. So basically, wherever I point the flashlight, the sights are there. As Ken Hackathorn said, this is basically a lightly supported, one-handed technique, and it seems to be the most easy to assume of the 6 demonstrated. Try them all out and find out what works best for you. Now let's move on with live fire drills using a flashlight.
Okay, what we're going to do now is actually demonstrate some of the individual flashlight techniques. We're going to live fire them. First we'll show you it's static so you can see exactly how the technique works. Then we'll actually do it what we call the tactical application, where after he engages the threat, he'll move, and ideally a step or so to the right or left. First I'm going to show you is the Harry's technique. And remember, the key to that is having the elbow pulled underneath. And what he's going to do is illuminate the target, come up, illuminate the target, identify it, and then fire 1 or 2 shots, his choice, to neutralize the target. And he'll do it stationary. What we want you to do is watch the motion of the gun and the flashlight and see how much movement we get from here. Okay, on the simply command up, he'll come up and execute a 2-shot burst on the target. Shooter, stand by. Up. Okay, if you watch the beam of light, you can see exactly how much motion you get with the recoil. All right, we'll do this again. This time I'm going to ask him to do it tactically, where after he illuminates, neutralizes the target, then he'll take a step either right or left to get out of that zone where he was with the flashlight. Okay, shooter, ready? Up. Good. And that's the Harry's technique. As you can see, it's very easy. At this point, he's already relaxed to the point where his arm is almost parallel, so he's lost a lot of the control. I think it's an effective technique, but not one that we would recommend unless it's for a short-term application. All right, the next thing we'd like to do, we're going to show you the Chapman technique, the one that's taught by the famous champion shooter Ray Chapman, where basically the flashlight's just held alongside the left side of the pistol. He'll come up. Initially, this will be a static one. He'll align himself with a target, come up, and engage it like so. And once again, to watch the motion of the pistol, movement of light. Okay, Bill, stand by. Up. And tactically moved away. Let's have him do that again. I want you to watch the motion of the light and the gun.
Right.
Ready? Up. Good, good. All right, very good. You saw how that worked. All right, if you want to recharge your piece, we'll move on to the next technique. And the next technique we're going to demonstrate is the one that Bill Rogers recommends and teaches, one of the ones that both Bill and I are very fond of. It requires, however, a flashlight like the Laser Products Surefire with the rear pressure switch. Okay, notice the technique, how he holds the pistol, lights aligned with the hand, nearly a conventional firing grip, so watch again how stable the weapon is. Let's try it. 2 shots. Ready? Up. If you watch again, I want you to watch this again, I want you to notice how much more control the pistol has. Very little recoil. And you'll see very little light bounce because this allows him to use a conventional grip of restraining the weapon from bouncing. Let's try it again, Bill. Ready? Up. Very good stability, good control. We'll do it this time tactically and have you move. After you engage the threat, move either one step right or left. Stand by. Up. Very good. Very good. Excellent. The last technique we're going to show you is going to be utilizing the light mount pistol. And what you'll see when you watch that is that it is an extremely easy technique and probably the simplest flashlight handgun shooting application you're going to find. In this case, the pistol is a Glock 17 9mm. The light mount is Laser Products Surefire. And I want you to watch how simple this system is. It's a conventional grip of the weapon, almost nothing different. And also want you to notice that when the target's illuminated, and show us that, Bill, when the target's illuminated, his flashlight, his sights will almost always be right in the middle of that brightest part of the beam. Let's try. 2 shots. Ready? Static from right there. Up. Good. We'll do that again. This time give me 2 headshots, Bill. Ready? Up. Excellent. Now this time I want you to do it tactically. You're going to engage the target with 2 shots. You're going to take a step right or left to get out of that zone where the light was. Ready? Up. Excellent. And once again, you can see why the light-mounted pistol has become one of the favorite tools of police SWAT teams and military special operation units. It allows them to move quickly and utilize the flashlight to identify their threat or immediately clear their zone.
Another big advantage too is the ability to shoot it one-handed.
Watch your strong-handed. And if you go up and look at the targets, you're going to see, again, Bill, if you will, illuminate this target right here and show them how bright the beam is with that unit right there. Extremely bright.
You can see that you need to practice live fire drills to understand exactly how your technique stands up against the recoil of the gun. It doesn't have to be dark, though it does help. And don't forget, once you practice and get a feel for controlling the recoil, that's when you can spend a lot of time in dry fire practice with the flashlight. You really need to practice to be able to make this a smooth transition to be able to point the flashlight where the sights are, regardless of what technique you use. Take the time as it does pay off. Here's Ken Hackathorn with more.
One of the key things to remember is the one nice thing about low light shooting is you don't have to do a lot of live firing. You can do most of this at home with an empty weapon, using your flashlight, learning your techniques, getting your alignment down. If you're going to do it at home, please ensure that you got a safe weapon. By that I mean make sure it's clear. And remember, the first thing we always do, particularly with an auto-loading pistol, is remove the source of the ammo, take the magazine out, then clear the weapon, visually inspect it, put your finger in, make sure there's no magazine in the weapon, check it a number of times, and then take your flashlight and you're ready to practice your technique, ensuring that the weapon's clear. Pick a part of your home that's got bulletproof walls, basement, garage, whatever. So you practice your technique of aligning the weapon to the target. You're going to have always a bulletproof background to do your practice with. You can do almost all those techniques as far as illuminating, moving, checking your different positions, high, low, whatever it is you can do it at home. But when you go to the range, there are a couple different approaches to it. First off, keep in mind that in the real world, you don't shoot in total darkness. People say, what do you do if it's totally dark? You don't have any justification to shoot, because in the total darkness, you can't identify your target. That's why it's imperative that you use a flashlight to search out and identify what the threat is. People say to me, well, I've got night sights, so I don't really need a flashlight. I can see my sights. How do you know what you're shooting at? So, shooting in the total darkness, if you can't see what you're shooting at or you can't identify it, don't pull the trigger. You go to the range. Remember, one of the problems you have in many areas is where do you go to shoot at night? A lot of places, a lot of gun clubs and stuff have rules that you can't fire after dark. So one of the advantages maybe is to go to a commercial range, shooting range, and a lot of those will allow you to turn the light down. Well, people often tell me, well, I can't get the light as low as it will be at night. In most parts of America, particularly urban America, we don't work in total darkness. We have lots of ambient light. So you'll rarely find yourself in a situation where you can't see. And if you think about it, just look outside your home at night or in the area you're normally employed in, or the areas that you travel in, and there's a lot of natural light, reflective ambient light. Typically, you can see the threat. What you can't see is the sights. You know where the bad guy is, but I really can't tell where my gun's at. That's one of the major virtues to having illuminated tritium sights. I'm a firm believer in them. If you can't afford the whole sight package, at least get your front sight inserted with tritium. At the ranges you're going to use a handgun, if you can find the front sight, because remember, what are we supposed to be looking at? The front sight, not the rear. If nothing else, get a front sight insert put in your front sight so you know where your gun's pointed. As long as you know where your gun's pointed, at close quarters combat distances, the front sight insert's probably going to be effective. Let you do the job. But for the extra price of a pistol, I'm convinced that if you carry a weapon for self-defense, the money spent on night sights is worth every penny of it. You only have to need the gun once to find out just how effective these are. So even if you go to an indoor range, ask the proprietor or the owner of the indoor range to allow you to turn the lights as low as he can. Downrange, bring your target into realistic ranges. Don't leave it out there at 25 meters or 50 feet. Bring it in to where it's, 5 to 10 yards away. That's the distances in which you're going to be engaging somebody, no further. Again, if you shoot somebody after dark, or shoot at somebody at a distance of 20 meters, one of the first things the local prosecutor is going to know is why you were shooting at them, why you didn't run away, why you didn't seek cover, why were you engaging them at that distance? What threat did they possibly pose you at 25 meters, unless you're actually under fire? So practice at realistic ranges. Practice primarily with the weapon in hand and the flashlight, because that's where you're going to be when you're searching. Just like the techniques Bill was showing you. Whichever one you pick, pistol at ready, finger straight, on your own initiative, bring the weapon up, illuminate the target, make sure it's the right target, light out, align your gun and fire. It's not a bad idea periodically to start with your pistol in your holster while you carry it and your flashlight in your hand. And combine the response, if you will, of flashlight in your pocket or flashlight in your hand. And what happens is you have to respond on signal or on your own initiative. Bring them out, put them together, and align your weapon with the target. So you practice that combination, that muscle memory, putting them together. And then actually fire the rounds. Fire singles, fire doubles. In other words, instead of always coming out and firing one shot, get in the habit of coming out and firing 2 shots, or maybe 3, 4, and 5 shots. So you understand that the recoil of the weapon and the light must stay together. If your hands fly apart or whatever, you're going to suffer in control, and you're not going to shoot well. So practice those techniques. But low light shooting, realistically, if it's done 5 to 10 meters, is all you need. Trying to worry about illuminating and shooting targets that's clear at the back of the range or long range away is very unrealistic, very impractical. And remember, the flashlight's responsibility is to identify the threat. A good system, if you're going out to a range that allows you to shoot at night and you've got shooting companions or friends, is put 3 or 4 targets downrange and put symbols on them. Write numbers on them with a magic marker, put X's, stars, diamonds, squares, and put them out there at random, and then turn your back to the threat and have the person you're practicing with and call out a number or call out a symbol. You have to turn around with your flashlight and physically identify which one has the square or which one has the circle or whatever the number is, and that's the one you engage with 2 shots. And recover your weapon, reholster it, pace the targets necessary, and have somebody get down and rearrange the targets or change the numbers with your back to the targets and do the drill again. So part of your problem, remember, is yeah, I can know there's 3 targets downrange, that's pretty obvious, but I've actually got to physically illuminate and identify which one is the one I need to shoot. Good practice, good training. And once again, that's the sort of thing you want to be able to say, I have prepared myself to actually use a flashlight to identify a threat, identify my targets, and then combine your shooting techniques to make sure that when you shoot the targets, you're shooting them accurately and your shot placement's good. Because no matter what, remember, the one thing about real life, one thing about competition, one thing about practice, they all have the same, and that is you have to have hits, and we want good hits. And that should be one of the things you strive for in your practice and your training, is that you align the sights with the gun, you align the flashlight with the gun to identify the threat. And once you've done that, if your decision is made, remember, we're back to the same old vision. We identify, decision, do I pull the trigger, and action, neutralize the target. And in the real world, when you want to practice it, every time you engage something in low light, you move. Don't stay where the flashlight was. Move away from it, because if there's return fire, they're going to shoot right back to where the light was. And if you're standing there, you're very likely to find yourself subject to a very uncomfortable period in your life. Move quickly. If you've got cover, practice moving to cover to identify it. Just a minute, we're going to show you a little drill here with Bill. We're going to use a facade here, simulating cover, and we're going to shoot low light with the flashlight technique, both as a target identifier and also as a means of identifying, and then he's going to follow up with a light out and actually using his night sight on his pistol to fire shots. I'll show you a good, simple training scenario that you all can get an idea of. It's one of the things we do when we train people for low light shooting.
Ken Hackathorn said it, and it's worth repeating. If it's dark and you shoot someone at 20 to 25 yards, the first thing the DA is going to ask you is, why didn't you retreat and or run away? After all, your first objective is to avoid a gunfight if at all possible. And at 25 yards, someone is going to argue that you had an opportunity to get away, and at the very least, that you could not properly identify a target at that distance anyways, even with a flashlight. So, when practicing, do so at realistic distances and try to imagine the circumstances. For example, in your home, you probably won't be wearing a holster. So start with a gun and flashlight in your hands. Then try it from the holster. Put your lifestyle in your practice and see how to apply your practice to your lifestyle. Here's Bill Wilson.
Okay, the basic drill I'm going to do here, I'm going to illuminate the threat with a flashlight. I see it's a threat. I'm going to move to cover, engage the threat with the night sights. I'm going to scan for further threat, see if there's a threat, move, engage with the night sights. Going to move to cover over here, scan for the threat. I see there's a threat, engage with the night sights.
All right. And how's the look of the night sights? Can you see the outline of the target back there?
It's no problem at all. Good visibility on the targets. Of course, with the night sights, it's really easy to place the shots.
All right.
Are we ready?
Yep.
Ready? Up. Ready? Up.
Let's get down and look at the targets.
Eliminate the target.
How'd it feel?
2 nice center hits.
Too bright. And 2 more hits.
You always want to try to learn something every time you do one of those drills. And basically what I learned in that little run through there because I got too close to the barricade, as we talked in the barricade stuff. And so when I moved to one of the positions, I knocked my flashlight out of position as I was moving, which wasn't a problem since I wasn't using the flashlight to shoot the shots. Right. But still, it would have been much better not to be banging the flashlight on the barricade.
Yeah, another issue we want to make very briefly about night sights, and there's a lot of them on the market, and they're all good. But one of the things you want to be aware of, the fact is if you use dots, and that's the most common one where you've got a front sight dot and 2 rear sight dots, and basically you can line them all up, is that they're all green, and typically tritium is the tritium gas, when it's illuminated, forms a green color. If they're all green, it's very easy under stress for some people to get the dots misaligned. In other words, the front sight could very well be on the outside, and you're looking at front sight, so the gun's completely off target. The other one is, remember, under conditions of stress, your eye tends to focus on the thing that's closest to it. And the rear dots typically will be brighter because they're closer to your eye than the front one. So we find that a lot of times people end up looking at the rear sights when they should be looking at the front. One of the things that Bill's done on his night eyes is he's incorporated a system where, for example, the front sight is the brightest tritium spectrum color, which is the green, and he's got like either an amber or a dull or yellow colored inserts for the rear. So basically there's no question that front sight is the bright green one. The dull yellow ones are the ones in the rear, so you know exactly where your alignment's supposed to be. And also the advantage is the front sight is definitely the brightest, and the rear ones are a little bit duller. They have like almost like a little opaque lens on them, so that you're aware of the fact that the brightest one is the one you need to be looking at. And that's one of the advantages to the night sight systems you should be shopping for, is the ones that aren't confusing and are easy to pick up and easy to understand, particularly under stress. Okay, I'm going to do a run through the very similar scenario that Bill did, and instead of using a flashlight and a weapon, I'm going to use the Laser Products light mount on the Glock, which is all one unit with the pressure switch attached to the frame. I'll simply show you that one of the advantages of this thing, it allows me a much more natural firing position because I can use a conventional grip of the weapon. The flashlight's always going to be aligned with the gun and the sights, where all the other systems rely upon me somehow manually making sure that they're aligned. And once again, as I'll show you at least one position here, allows me to use a one-handed technique if necessary. So I'll do almost the same thing that he did, except I'm going to do it with a light-mounted weapon just to show you how simple it is. Okay, Bill.
Stand by. Go.
You with a knife! Drop the knife! Drop the knife! You with a knife! Drop it right now! You with a gun! Hey, with a gun! Put the gun down!
Go!
You with a knife! Drop the knife! Drop the knife! You with a knife! Drop it right now! You with a gun! Hey, with a gun! Put the gun down! Like so. Take a look at the hits.
Okay, target number 3. Great. How are we looking?
2 center hits.
2 A's crossing each other. And 2 more A's.
So once again, the light mounted weapon for best results is clearly the way to go. Expensive and somewhat dedicated to a weapon that, face it, with a weapon like this, you're not going to stick it in your holster and carry it to work or wear it back and forth to your job, but left at home, placed in a strategic point in your home, in your bedroom, or wherever you normally keep your self-defense handguns. Very practical measure.
You saw that Hackathorn had a gun malfunction on his practice run, and I hope you noticed how he handled it. He solved the problem and continued. When you practice on the range, strive to practice for reality. If you have a gun malfunction, fight through it. Clear the gun, get it working properly, keep your wits, and solve the problem, and then continue. Survive. The way you practice is the way you will respond in real life, so practice correctly. In this next segment, Ken Hackathorn shows you why you really do need a flashlight, and Wilson demonstrates the tactical use of the flashlight.
A question often asked is, if my weapon's equipped with night sights, why do I need a flashlight? And if somebody shot at me, don't I have justification for returning fire? I've seen the muzzle flash. I know I'm under fire. Lethal threat is involved. Why can't I use my night sights to line it with the target, if I can make out the target, and fire my neutralizing shots? Why should I use a flashlight for identification purposes? Well, let's give you a classic example. Suppose downrange we have what we perceive to be a threat. We see there's somebody down there and I yell, "Hey, you!" Let's see what we've got. Do we have grounds for returning fire? Oops. Would you want to return fire without identifying a threat in a situation like this? You may fire shots that you wished you hadn't. So the flashlight comes into play once again as a means of identifying your threat. So don't take for granted just because there's been shots fired and you have night sights in your weapon that you can just go ahead and return fire. You need to know exactly what you're returning fire at. Hence, utilization of the flashlight.
What I want to show you here is the importance of moving after you illuminate the threat zone. Basically what you have, if you illuminate and you stand stationary to either make your decision what you're going to do or to go ahead and fire with your night sights or whatever, here's basically what the threat sees. You notice after I turn the light out, if there's any ambient light whatsoever, the threat knows exactly where I am to return fire at me. It's much preferable, turn the light on, realize what the threat is, move out of the threat area, especially to cover if there's any cover available. I've moved away from the flashlight illumination and I've acquired cover at the same time. Now I can return fire virtually at my own leisure, a much better chance of survival. And another thing you never want to do, let's say you're in the middle of a firefight and you've got a gun malfunction or you've run your gun dry or whatever, something like that, and you're got your flashlight on and you do one of these numbers while you're messing with your gun. I mean, you've made yourself into a perfect target. So you need to always be sure, anytime after you've illuminated the light, always move and always make sure that the light's out. Never illuminate except just at the instant that you're trying to identify the threat, and then move instantly. Identify, move, engage if necessary.
Okay, do it again.
Do it again. Here we are again. I cut the pie out, check the zone, identify the threat. Back behind cover. Remember, flashlight identifies a threat. Utilize your night sights to get your alignment and engage your target.
Coming up, Ken Hackathorn will demonstrate a simple house clearing exercise using a flashlight and a handgun. Two things I want you to notice. First, how he uses the flashlight, turning it on briefly and moving. Another more subtle tactic he demonstrates is the verbal control of the situation and the subjects themselves. Taking control with your verbal commands is a very important tactic and one that should be observed and then practiced. Here's Ken.
Okay, what we're going to do here, folks, is a very simple, slow house clearing drill. Limited light with nighttime. We're going to use the flashlight to assist in our search and identification of any potential threats. And we're going to move through the shooting house scenario here, clearing it tactically as soundly as we can. Remember, this is not a race. This is not a dynamic entry. You're not trying to save anybody at this point. We're simply trying to clear carefully and tactically without getting compromised. So please watch the process. We'll try to show you how it hopefully should be done, utilizing a flashlight for search techniques with the handgun. You with the gun! Drop the gun! You in the kitchen! Put your weapon down! Show me your hands now! Don't move! Drop the gun! Drop the gun! Drop your weapon, now! Clear.
That house clearing exercise reminded me of another important way to use a flashlight to your advantage. Police officers know and use this technique quite effectively to gain control of a situation. Simply direct the beam of light into your adversary's eyes. If they have been in the dark for some time, it will cause temporary blindness and possibly confusion or disorientation. Either way, then you have a chance to move, draw your weapon, or seek cover, or some combination of all three. Now, in this next segment, we demonstrate muzzle flash of many popular self-defense types of ammunition. The object here is to compare the size and intensity of the flash. The smaller and less intense the flash, the better it is for two reasons. First, a large, bright muzzle flash will make it easier for an adversary to identify your position and possibly return fire. Second, this large flash will also cause temporary blindness to you, much the same way as a flashlight beam in your eyes. So, here's Bill Wilson with a variety of factory ammunition and some of his selected hand-loaded self-defense rounds.
Okay, the first round we're going to shoot is Federal 230 grain American Eagle hardball. Okay, this is a Winchester USA 230 grain hardball. Okay, this load is a Federal Classic 185 grain hollow point. Okay, the next load is the Federal Classic 230 grain hollow point. Okay, this load is the El Dorado 230 grain Starfire. Okay, this load is the Federal HydroShock 230 grain. Okay, this load is the Remington 230 grain Golden Saber.
Wow.
Okay, this is the 230 grain Winchester SXT. Okay, this is the 185 grain Remington Golden Saber. Okay, here we have the 185 grain Winchester Silvertip. Whoa, serious muzzle flash. Whoa, serious muzzle flash. It's 5.3 grains of Vitavori 320 with a 230 grain Hornady XTP. Approximately 870 feet per second. Okay, here's another one of my favorite self-defense hand loads. This is 5.4 grains of Royal Scott D with a 230 grain Hornet A XTP.
In closing this program, I must re-emphasize the final point. If you carry a gun, carry a flashlight. If you have a gun next to your bed, have a flashlight next to your bed. Always identify your target before you shoot. For Bill Wilson and Ken Hackathorn, I'm Lenny McGill. Shoot fast, shoot accurately, and most of all, shoot safely. Bill Wilson, Ken Hackathorn, and Lenny McGill Productions have teamed together to produce the most informative, technically correct approach to modern defensive pistol tactics and shooting techniques ever released on videotape. 12 titles in all, packed with the latest on skills, drills, equipment, mindset, tactics, and shooting techniques, plus a whole lot more. Wilson and Hackathorn are both experts in their fields, and Lenny McGill Productions is known worldwide for its high-quality firearms-related video productions. Together, they have created a series of programs that will entertain, amaze, inform, and make you aware of the tactics you need to survive a real gunfight. Basic Self-Defense Handgun Use and Safety is a two-part set covering the basic fundamentals of shooting: grip, stance, sight picture, sight alignment, and trigger pull. Plus, informative segments on self-defense pistols and ammunition. What happens in a real gunfight? What gun is best for you? 9mm versus 45, and lots more.
Start to think about how can I practice and train that's going to increase my chance of survival.
Advanced Self-Defense Shooting Tactics and Techniques is a 5-part series that takes the viewer to a new level in both shooting skills and tactical knowledge. Extensive discussions and demonstrations on the use of cover, shooting while moving, both towards and away from your target. You'll learn the advantages of a speed reload versus a tactical reload, aimed fire versus flash sight picture versus point shooting, using your vehicle for cover, shooting from a vehicle, 2 shots versus 1 shot. Over 5 hours in all of the finest pistol instruction techniques in the world.
One of the best lines I've heard, and it's a great one, is people saying, what's the best weapon you can have? It's your mind.
Combat Ready Self-Defense Shooting Practice Drills is the first program ever that takes you into the practice routines of 2 of the finest pistol shooters in the world. Bill Wilson and Ken Hackathorn share 20 years of experience as they show you how to practice like a pro and increase your skill level faster and easier. You seen both the front post?
Oh yeah, on that kind of a shot, I'm getting a true sight picture.
And have you seen the both front and rear sight?
Oh yeah, front and rear sight, good alignment, you know, really paying attention to the front sight. Actually, just like I would be taking a 25-yard precision shot.
Nightmaster, low-light shooting and flashlight techniques, is an up-to-date look at the equipment and tactics needed to successfully utilize a handheld light source in an armed encounter. Wilson and Hackathorn demonstrate the latest flashlights, their advantages and disadvantages, and how to use them for your tactical advantage.
Indoors, sometimes you can't move a big distance, but if you're here and you're illuminated and all of a sudden you see a threat, one step to the right, one step to the left, either way, to get out of that zone where the incoming fire may be returned to.
House Clearing and Cornering Tactics and Techniques is a 75-minute program that shows you how to enter a house or room and increase your chance for survival. Plus, you'll learn how to maintain cover, why to stay out of the fatal funnel, how to look for and avoid telegraphing target indicators, and the importance of maintaining distance from walls and cover. Plus, a very graphic demonstration of cover versus concealment as Wilson and Hackathorn shoot through ordinary walls and cinder blocks.
So unlike the normal indoor walls, sheetrock walls, which in reality are just concealment, concrete blocks, in fact, provide very good cover.
Practical Concealed Carry is a 90-minute program that shows the basics of concealed carry, how to fit a holster to your body, over 6 different methods of carry, live fire drills, pocket holsters, safety, and lots more.
The virtue of the fanny pack is that if you're in that proverbial summer evening going out for dinner and you're just wearing a pair of shorts and a polo short or a t-shirt, the fanny pack gives you a means of carrying a little bit more substantial firearm and having it readily available.
Building the ultimate 1911 self-defense handgun is designed to save you time and money. The master gunsmiths of Wilson's Combat demonstrate advanced gunsmithing techniques as Bill Wilson and Ken Hackathorn discuss what are the most practical and necessary custom procedures for your 1911 handgun. Overall, this new series of 12 professionally produced videos is one of the finest resources of self-defense handgun shooting tactics and techniques in the world. Brought to you by Wilson Combat. If you would like to get involved in an exciting new shooting sport where you can use your practical carry gear, shoot realistic scenarios in a competition environment, and meet other shooters interested in defensive pistol skills, you need to check out the International Defensive Pistol Association, IDPA. They're forming clubs all over the country and in some foreign countries as well. They can be contacted at IDPA, P.O. Box 639 in Maryville, Arkansas. The zip code is 72616-0639. Their email address is idpa.org@yournet.com or visit their website at www.idpa.com. Bill Wilson and Ken Hackathorn are 2 of the directors of this new exciting organization, so you know it will be practical. If you'd like to improve your defensive pistol skills, get involved today.